Wakana had always admired his grandfather's intricately crafted Hina dolls. Enchanted by their artistry, he resolved to follow in his grandfather's footsteps, dedicating himself to training as a master doll craftsman. He spent his days assisting in his grandfather's shop, striving tirelessly to refine his skills. Yet despite his efforts, often laboring late into the night to perfect the doll's painted details, he grew frustrated, finding his results lackluster. His true talent lay in sewing their delicate garments, a skill he honed with precision. However, Wakana's singular focus on dolls left him isolated. He had no friends, a fact that even his grandfather worried about. At school, he observed his classmates chatting animatedly about shared interests, resigned to the belief that he would never fit in. His world revolved solely around dolls, deepening his loneliness. One day, Marin, the school's cheerful and popular student, noticed a stain on his arm. Mistaking it for a bruise, she expressed concern, only to learn it was merely ink. Wakana, flustered by the attention, feared exposure of his unconventional passion. Later, he overheard Marin recounting to friends how someone had mocked her love of anime. She angrily defended the idea that no one should be ridiculed for their interests. Wakana watched her, marveling at how effortlessly she navigated life, surrounded by friends, accepted for who she was. Their worlds felt galaxies apart. During a classroom cleanup, Wakana worked alone, as classmates routinely abandoned their duties, leaving him to handle the task. He didn't protest, believing silence preferable to awkward small talk. But when Marin stayed to help, she grew indignant on his behalf. "Why let everyone take advantage of you?" she pressed, urging him to speak up for himself. Her words lingered in Wakana's mind long afterward. That evening, as he sewed doll clothes at home, Marin's advice replayed in his thoughts, a quiet challenge to rethink the walls he'd built around himself. One afternoon, Wakana discovered his grandfather's aged sewing machine had finally broken down. Disheartened by the setback, he recalled an unused sewing machine in his school's craft room, a space rarely visited by others. Seizing the opportunity to work undisturbed, he hurried there, eager to continue sewing. As he threaded the machine, Wakana grew animated, murmuring encouragement to the doll in his hands. Startled by the creak of the door, he froze. Marin stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with curiosity. Panicking, he fumbled and dropped the doll, scrambling to retrieve it. Expecting mockery, he braced himself, but Marin's reaction stunned him. Instead of ridicule, she lit up with excitement, marveling at his craftsmanship. Flustered, Wakana explained his family's doll shop, and Marin asked to inspect the doll. For the first time, someone had praised his passion. His chest swelled with pride. When she inquired if he'd crafted the doll itself, he admitted he only made the clothes. Without warning, Marin began unbuttoning her blouse. Wakana averted, his gaze baffled until he noticed she wore a handmade dress beneath it. Marin clarified that she'd attempted to sew a cosplay outfit for a beloved video game character, but lacked both skill and proper tools. Wakana, unable to resist analyzing the garment, critiqued its uneven seams and mismatched fabric. He immediately apologized, fearing he'd offended her, but Marin laughed. "I'm not mad," she insisted, confessing she'd resorted to hand-stitching. After failing to operate a sewing machine, her request stunned him. She pleaded for his help creating the cosplay. Hesitant, Wakana admitted he'd never tailored human clothing, but vowed to try. Marin erupted into gleeful celebration, bouncing, as she gushed about the character, a heroine from a game Wakana recognized as unconventional. When he awkwardly remarked that he didn't think girls liked those kinds of games, Marin fixed him with a stern look. "Liking stuff isn't about being a boy or girl," she declared. Her words struck a chord, echoing his own childhood. Shame over loving dolls. The next morning, Marin appeared unannounced at Wakana's home. He gaped, stunned she'd found his address. Grinning, she explained she'd searched online for his family's doll shop. Before he could protest, she barged into his workspace, demanding he take her measurements. Wakana's hands trembled as he reached for his tape measure, equal parts terrified and exhilarated by the whirlwind that was Marin. The moment Marin stepped into Wakana's private workspace, a sanctuary previously shared only with his grandfather, he flushed with unease. When she boldly requested her measurements, he stammered through an explanation from his sewing manual. The process required her to be in undergarments. Before he could suggest finding another helper, Marin began stripping down, leaving him mortified. She reassured him she'd worn a bikini for this purpose, but Wakana's face burned crimson nonetheless. Slapping his cheeks to steel himself, He resolved to treat this as a professional task, channeling his focus into meticulous measurements. His concentration wavered only once when measuring her bust, his hands trembling briefly before he regained composure. Marin, meanwhile, chatted casually, seemingly unbothered by the intimacy, just as Wakana relaxed, crouching to measure her legs. His proximity caused Marin to blush for the first time, her confidence flickering under his silent intensity. After recording the final numbers, Wakana asked for the game's character design to study its aesthetics. Marin handed him the disc, and he spent hours that evening analyzing every detail, scribbling notes on fabric textures and stitching patterns. His grandfather, upon delivering a new sewing machine, paused at the sight of Wakana, engrossed in the mature game. Though bewildered by his grandson's serious note-taking amid the risque visuals, he left without comment. That night, Wakana dreamed of Marin twirling in the finished cosplay, her playful smirk and exaggerated poses leaving him, flustered even in sleep. The next day, Marin greeted him openly at school, her friends curiously eyeing their interaction. Whispers of a potential romance spread, prompting Wakana to evade her between classes. She cornered him after school, demanding an explanation. He admitted fearing the gossip might tarnish her reputation, but Marin dismissed the rumors with a laugh, dragging him to the fabric district to shop. To her surprise, Wakana arrived over-prepared. Lists of materials, sketched designs, and annotations highlighting details even Marin, a superfan, had overlooked. As they hunted for supplies, Marin noticed his quiet confidence, how his eyes lit up while assessing fabrics. Yet beneath his professionalism lingered a tension, a mix of pride in his craft and dread of the spotlight now thrust upon him. Though Marin possessed a thorough understanding of the character, Wakana consistently demonstrated sharper judgment in selecting fabrics and wigs for her cosplay. Grateful for his expertise, she thanked him repeatedly during their shopping trip. On their way back, Marin enthusiastically introduced Wakana to the expansive world of cosplay, explaining how costumes could be showcased at events, professional photo shoots, or even casual home displays. She cited the example of a reclusive, yet celebrated cosplayer who maintained anonymity by never attending events, instead sharing meticulously crafted photos online. As Marin scrolled through images of renowned cosplayers, praising their beauty, she noticed Wakana's prolonged silence. When she asked if he disliked them, he confessed that as a child he had reserved the word beautiful exclusively for his grandfather's dolls, a term he now associated with profound, almost sacred significance. Marin, touched by his sincerity, admitted her surprise that he had played the video game she recommended, a gesture her friends had never reciprocated. She expressed heartfelt gratitude for his dedication to her cosplay dream, though her mention of an upcoming event in 2 weeks sent Wakana into a spiral of anxiety. The timeline felt impossible, given his inexperience sewing human-sized costumes. Returning home, Wakana's grandfather questioned his whereabouts. Spotting the women's stockings and suspenders purchased for the costume, the elderly man recoiled in shock, lost his balance, and fractured his hip, requiring hospitalization. Wakana's cousin insisted his grandfather recover at her home near the hospital for 2 weeks. Overwhelmed, Wakana now juggled daily visits to his grandfather, marathon sewing sessions, exam preparation, and managing the doll shop alone, answering calls and assisting customers between frantic stitching. When Wakana informed Marin of the accident, she offered assistance, but he declined, insisting he could manage. They exchanged contact information. To streamline communication, Marin's concern grew as Wakana's schedule consumed him. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His doll painting routine lapsed, and he tearfully doubted his future as a Hina doll artisan. Yet memories of his grandfather's pride in customer joy and Marin's infectious excitement pushed him to sew through the night, determined to honor both their dreams, and finally completed the costume. Just when Marin saw the finished outfit, she apologized profusely for miscommunicating her plans, clarifying that she had never intended to attend the event. Wakana, relieved he hadn't disappointed her, watched as Marin's eyes welled with tears. She confessed she'd mistaken his distance for worry over his grandfather's accident, unaware that her project had drained him. Wakana reassured her, admitting his own failure to ask for help despite her repeated offers. He then suggested she try on the full ensemble, dress, wig, and makeup, to check for adjustments. As Marin transformed into the character, Wakana noted her need for false eyelashes. Handing her several pairs he kept for doll customization. She teased him, asking if the lashes belonged to a girlfriend, only to blush when he explained their purpose. Her embarrassment shifted to earnest encouragement. "You'll make that dream doll someday. I know it." Marin marveled at the costumes' precision, though Wakana fretted over its impractical design for movement. She dismissed his worries, declaring it flawless. After a photoshoot, she hesitantly attended the event, where crowds swarmed her for pictures. At the venue, Wakana lingered. At the edges, pride warring with anxiety that their collaboration and fragile friendship might end. Suddenly Marin rushed to him, flushed and disheveled. Her filler bra had shifted, tightening the outfit, and the heavy wig exacerbated the summer heat. They retreated to a quiet stairwell, where she laughed through her discomfort, already planning their next project. 50 more characters to go. Wakana's quiet remark, "You looked pretty," hung in the air, a word he'd once reserved only for dolls. Marin's cheeks flushed scarlet, her earlier confidence momentarily unraveled. Marin became electrified with excitement. Though disappointed to leave early, they both agreed it was necessary given the circumstances. As they exited, Marin suddenly brightened, enthusiastically asking what character they should tackle next. She revealed having 50 favorite characters she dreamed of cosplaying, ensuring their collaboration would continue far longer than Wakana anticipated. Overcome by the moment, Wakana shyly remarked how pretty she looked in cosplay, a significant compliment considering he traditionally reserved that word exclusively for the exquisite dolls he admired. Marin immediately recognized the weight of his words, touched by this rare praise. Later, as Wakana researched proper wig care techniques for her, he noticed Marin's unusually subdued demeanor around him. When Wakana's grandfather finally returned home, he suffered another shock upon finding his grandson handling yet another women's garment with Marin present. After explanations about cosplay, the three engaged in detailed discussions about costume improvements over dinner. During the meal, Marin shared more about her personal life, her mother's passing, her father's overseas business assignment, and how she'd learned to live independently despite her youth. Wakana's grandfather, moved by her situation, warmly invited her to join their family meals whenever she wished, stirred unfamiliar but pleasant emotions in her heart. Meanwhile, Wakana remained characteristically oblivious to these developing feelings, focusing, instead, on perfecting his craft and helping bring her cosplay visions to life. Their unique friendship continued deepening in ways neither had anticipated when they first began working together. One particularly rainy afternoon, Wakana's grandfather noticed a drenched girl standing outside their shop, assuming she must be one of Wakana's friends, though the boy had only ever mentioned Marin. The kind-hearted old man invited her inside to take a warm bath. When Wakana returned, he grew immediately suspicious since Marin was his sole friend. Fearing a robbery in progress, he burst into the bathroom without thinking, only to encounter a completely unknown, unclothed young woman. After profuse apologies for the intrusion, Wakana demanded an explanation for her presence. The girl explained she'd come because she heard rumors about his clothing craftsmanship. Wakana's face lit up, thinking she meant his beloved dolls, and eagerly began showing them off. His enthusiasm quickly dimmed when she clarified she was actually interested in the cosplay outfits he'd made for Marin. He tried explaining he didn't take cosplay commissions, but the cunning girl blackmailed him, threatening to report his bathroom intrusion unless he agreed to make her costume. It was then Wakana recognized her as Juju, the famously reclusive cosplayer Marin idolized, whose photos she'd often shown him. When pressed about how she'd discovered his involvement, Juju revealed she'd been secretly stalking them since the event. She'd seen Marin's social media posts, hidden at the venue to observe Wakana's handiwork in person, then followed them home to learn his address. Just as this unsettling confession concluded, Marin arrived and became starstruck upon meeting her cosplay idol. Juju, ignoring Marin's fangirling, bluntly stated which character she wanted cosplayed. Marin immediately launched into an impressively detailed explanation of the character's backstory, surprising Juju with her deep knowledge. Juju visibly softened, realizing she'd misjudged Marin as just another superficial cosplay enthusiast. When Juju requested Wakana's contact information, she awkwardly clarified to Marin that this was strictly for cosplay purposes, assuming they were dating. Wakana turned bright red, stammering that he'd never been in a relationship, which inexplicably made Marin beam with happiness. Marin suggested they all collaborate on the cosplay, but Juju refused until Marin and Wakana offered to split studio costs. Juju reluctantly agreed, but emphasized this would be a one-time arrangement. Later, when Wakana visited Marin's apartment to borrow an anime DVD for research, he found himself flustered as she answered the door in rumpled pajamas, her eyes squinting. Without her contact lenses. Oblivious to his discomfort, Marin shyly proposed they watch the anime together in her room. As the show began, Marin suddenly became aware of their intimate, date-like situation, growing increasingly self-conscious. Meanwhile, Wakana remained completely engrossed in analyzing costume details, his professional focus overriding any romantic awareness of their alone time together. Marin began to feel hungry and decided to make some homemade treats. She thought she would draw hearts on them to give to Wakana, but the shapes failed and the treats turned out shapeless. Marin felt disappointed, although Wakana commented that their taste was much better than any he had tried at home. Wakana then told his grandfather that he was worried he'd never fulfill his dream of painting dolls, since he hadn't worked on one for so long. His grandfather replied that he had noticed a marked improvement in Wakana's latest pieces. He explained that Wakana's practice applying cosplay makeup, an art that demands the same precision as doll painting, had helped him develop lighter, more confident strokes. Later, Wakana sent his cosplay design sketches to Juju. Juju said she was impressed by their level of detail and taught him a trick to enhance his costumes. She explained that her younger sister, Shinju, was the one who took and edited all her cosplay photos. Curious, Wakana asked to meet Shinju so he could learn how to use a camera and improve his own pictures. When Marin and Wakana imagined Shinju, they pictured a cute little girl. After all, Juju, the older sister, still looked like a child. Their surprise, Shinju appeared much older than her years. They learned that Shinju had created Juju's online account and managed everything because Juju did cosplay for herself and showed little interest in interacting with others. Shinju then offered to teach Marin and Wakana about photography. When Marin asked if Shinju wanted to cosplay too, Shinju blushed and said she preferred only to photograph. They agreed to meet on the weekend at Shinju's studio, an abandoned hospital, which made Juju feel frightened. During their visit, Juju confided in Wakana that, as a little girl, she had dreamed of becoming a magical girl like those in anime. She said she eventually realized it was pure fiction, but cosplay let her live that dream in a make-believe way. Realizing how much cosplay meant to Juju, Wakana asked why she had not hired a more experienced maker than himself. Juju replied that the moment she saw Marin's cosplay photos, she had fallen in love with the outfit and wanted to work with its creator. Wakana remembered his grandfather saying it was a true achievement when a customer felt that strong connection to their doll, and he felt thrilled that Juju felt the same about her costume. Excited, he took Juju's hand, which reportedly made her swoon since she had never been that close to a boy before. Marin invited Wakana to go to the beach. She said that, once they arrived, they had fun playing in the sand. Marin decided she wanted to wade into the sea and asked Wakana to join her. Since it was his first time at the beach, Wakana explained that he was amazed by the sensation of the sea. He admitted that, having focused his whole life on dolls, he had only recently realized there were so many other experiences he'd missed. Marin then suggested they visit new places together so he could discover more of the world. She captured a joyful photo of him just before he stumbled into the water. With their cosplays finally complete, the two returned to the studio to try on the outfits. Juju and Marin waited for Shinju and Wakana, unaware that Wakana had encouraged Shinju to try cosplay herself. Shinju had confessed she wanted to portray a male character from the same anime that Juju and Marin cosplayed. Wakana reassured her by recalling that, at the last event, he'd seen many people cosplaying characters of the opposite sex. It was all about becoming whoever you wanted to be. He helped her adjust the design to look appropriately masculine, and after overcoming a few fitting challenges, Shinju's costume turned out perfect. Juju and Marin were surprised and delighted, and they all began snapping photos together to record the moment. Later, Juju thanked Wakana for helping her sister and felt sorry that she hadn't known Shinju's wish earlier. Wakana comforted her, saying that many people struggle to voice their dreams, and that Shinju had always been a caring sister at home. That evening, Juju and Shinju reviewed the photos. Juju realized she was feeling something new for Wakana. She worried Shinju might regret her costume choice, but Shinju reassured her that it looked fantastic and admitted she felt a little jealous. Shinju explained that Juju always looked beautiful in cosplay, but because of her petite frame, she had to choose only characters that suited her size. If she were taller like Shinju, she could tackle many more styles. Shinju brightened at the thought, and Juju suggested they plan another group cosplay since they'd all enjoyed it so much. Marin then picked her next costume. Wakana thought it would be simpler and quicker to finish, but he realized it would be far shorter than their previous outfits, revealing more of Marin's body, and that made him uncomfortable. After a fun day of shopping, he explained that he wouldn't feel at ease seeing her in such a design. Marin agreed, and they decided that from then on, she would consider his feelings when choosing her cosplays. Marin suggested they spend the rest of the day at a nearby manga cafe, where people sat shoulder to shoulder reading comics. Because the space was cramped, Marin and Wakana ended up sitting very close together, which made Wakana feel nervous. Marin showed him a manga she loved and mentioned that she wanted to cosplay one of the characters, someone who wore pigtails. She worried that pigtails wouldn't suit her, but Wa insisted he thought she would look wonderful with them. They agreed it would be her next cosplay. After Wakana read the manga, he realized the pigtail character appeared only briefly and without much detail. He knew he would have to imagine her full look and design the costume himself. They arranged to meet at a location Marin had chosen for their photo shoot, but upon arrival, discovered it was actually a motel. Wakana blushed as Marin changed into the outfit he had created from his vision. They began taking pictures, but after a few shots, Wakana felt he was missing the perfect angle. He asked Marin to stand directly above him so he could capture her likeness more accurately. When they reviewed the images, they realized the pose was too intimate for the setting, and to their horror, the lights suddenly went out. Both were left mortified in the dark. The next day, Marin realized she had left her homework at school and asked Wakana to help her retrieve it. Afterwards, they decided to swim in the school pool. Marin slipped and fell into the deep end. Wakana dove in to save her, since she didn't know how to swim and was nearly drowning. Once she was safe, he remembered how much she loved the beach and asked if she still wanted to have fun by the water. She explained that she usually stayed on the sand, taking pictures, snacking and enjoying the view, and Wakana admitted he too loved painting dolls despite not yet mastering their faces. He gently reminded her to stay safe. That evening, they attended a local festival to watch fireworks together. Wakana thought back to past years he'd spent alone in his room listening to the explosions from afar and felt grateful to be there with Marin, sharing the display. As fireworks boomed overhead and soft music played around them, they gazed into each other's eyes and leaned in, only for Marin to tease him by sticking out her tongue, which was stained blue from candy. The moment passed, and they laughed. Later, that night, as Wakana prepared for bed, his phone rang. It was Marin, who said she'd watched a horror movie alone and was too frightened to sleep. They talked quietly about all the fun they'd shared, until Wakana, exhausted, fell asleep. Marin whispered to herself that she loved him. Marin then turned to the audience, thanked them for watching and asked in her gentle voice that if they enjoyed the video, they would hit the like button and subscribe to help the channel grow. She closed by wishing everyone well and reminding them to take care.